What's going on at the moment? Rates of self-harm are through the roof. Body dysmorphia is on the up. In America, suicide has currently hit a 30-year high. There are lots of troubling trends in the statistics which are really suggesting powerfully that there's something going on in our culture or society that's somehow kind of toxic. So my book, Selfie, is my attempt to find out why, to find out the answer to these questions. What is ailing people right now? And the journey really begins 2,500 years ago in ancient Greece. And it was in ancient Greece where we kind of became individuals, and we came upon this idea of individualism, which really speaks to our experience of the world as being made up of individual objects, one of which, of course, is the human being. Now, one of the slightly discombobulating things about culture is that it really becomes who we are. We really absorb our culture, and it becomes just our sort of default way of seeing the world. And when I first came upon these ideas, my immediate response was, well, that's not individualism, that's not Greek culture, that's just the most obvious way of being a human and experiencing the world. But then I started reading about these amazing psychological studies where they compare the experience of people from the West, from America, Canada, and the UK, who have this Greek inheritance, to people from East Asia, from countries like Japan and China, who come from a Confucianist background, which isn't individualist. It's much more collective. They see the world as being made up of lots of connected forces, so everything's kind of connected. And even though these ideas were kind of coming around 2,500 years ago, people today still experience the world in accordance with these ideas. So one of the ways they've shown this is by tracking the tiny little eye movements that we make when we come into a new environment. These are completely unconscious things. And when they track the eye movements of somebody from America, they'll tend to focus on just a few, relatively few individual objects in the environment. Whereas when they track the eye movements of somebody from East Asia, their eyes will move much more around and see much more things in context. Another recent study looked at children's drawings, school children's drawings, and they find that Canadian children draw pictures with far fewer things in context compared to Japanese school children, who include many more things, and even tend to draw their horizons higher up, which is consistent with experiencing more things in context. And also, fascinatingly, is something that we see in East Asian art going back centuries. So, we really do become our culture in a very deep and profound way. Culture is much more than just the books you're reading and the newspapers you're seeing every day. It really becomes a huge part of who we are and how we experience the world. And so, where are we today then? What is going on in our society and culture that's causing so much distress in people? Well, one of the answers is that today we are what's called neoliberals. We live under this idea of neoliberalism. And neoliberalism can be seen as a very kind of concentrated, heightened form of individualism. And it came about in the late 70s, early 80s, as a response to the economic chaos that was spreading through the West at the time. And the answer, the solution to kind of sorting all this out was in effect to gamify human society, to strip away all the protections from the state, so the welfare state was cut right back, and to free businesses from their responsibilities for looking after people, jobs for life, big pensions, all that kind of thing. And the idea was that we should all become more competitive. We should be kind of forced to compete with each other in this kind of Hunger Games situation. And of course, most of us, me included, have been living under neoliberalism all our lives, and like we were doing in ancient Greece, and like the Chinese did under Confucianism, we've absorbed these ideas. And what that means, of course, is that when we get things wrong, we blame ourselves. And under neoliberalism, there are hugely increased pressures on us. We're all living in this kind of world where the protections have gone away now. Jobs for life don't really exist anymore. The welfare state isn't there to catch you when you fall so much. And what happens is that when we do fall, we blame ourselves and we turn in on ourselves. And that, to me, is a big part of the explanation why we're seeing all these problems with body dysmorphia, self-harm, eating disorder, and so on. But it's not all bad news. Another thing I'm looking at in Selfie is what can we do to sort ourselves out, to kind of escape these powerful forces? And for me, one of the answers is that we need to recognise that this perfect self that we're all trying to be, this thin, extrovert, successful, lovely person, is a cultural construct. It's not real. And actually, the truth is that we can't be anything we want to be as we constantly tell in our culture. We're animals, we're biological machines, that we all have our own personalities and our own limitations. And the first step into kind of freeing ourselves from these pressures that we tend to feel, is understanding that this thing is just a cultural construct. This person that we're all supposed to be is a fantasy, it's an illusion. And by accepting that, and by we can then start accepting ourselves for who we are with all our limitations. And that to me is a really strong first step in the path to really actually becoming much happier people.